Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about a famous play from William Shakespeare. Macbeth is William Shakespeare's tragedy about power, ambition, deceit, and murder. The three witches foretell Macbeth's rise to King of Scotland, but also prophesy that future kings will descend from Banquo, a fellow army captain. Courted by his ambitious wife, Lady Macbeth, he murders King Duncan, becomes king, and sends mercenaries to kill Banquo and his sons. His attempts to defy the prophecy fail, however. Macduff kills Macbeth, and Duncan's son Malcolm becomes king. The main characters. Macbeth is a general in the army of King Duncan, originally Thane of Glamis, then Thane of Cawdor, and later King of Scotland. Lady Macbeth is Macbeth's wife, and later Queen of Scotland. Duncan is the King of Scotland, Macduff, Thane of Fife, Banquo, Macbeth's friend and general in the army of King Duncan, Malcolm, Duncan's elder son. Set in medieval Scotland and partly based on a true historical account, Macbeth charged the bloody rise to power and tragic downfall of the warrior Macbeth. Already a successful soldier in the army of King Duncan, Macbeth is informed by three witches that he is to become king. As part of the same prophecy, the witches predict that future Scottish kings will be descended not from Macbeth but from his fellow army captain Banquo. Although initially prepared to wait for fate to take its course, Macbeth is stung by ambition and confusion when King Duncan nominates his son Malcolm as his heir. Returning to his castle, Macbeth allows himself to be persuaded and directed by his ambitious wife, who realizes that regicide, the murder of the king, is the quickest way to achieve the destiny that her husband has been promised. A perfect opportunity presents itself when King Duncan pays a royal visit to Macbeth's castle. At first, Macbeth is loath to commit a crime that he knows will invite judgment, if not on earth, then in heaven. Once more, however, his wife prevails upon him. Following an evening of revelry, Lady Macbeth drugs the guards of the king's bedchamber. Then, at a given signal, Macbeth, although filled with misgivings, ascends to the king's room and murders him while he sleeps. Haunted by what he has done, Macbeth is once more reprimanded by his wife, whose inner strength seems only to have been increased by the treacherous killing. Suddenly, both are alarmed by a loud knocking at the castle door. When the drunken porter of Macbeth's castle finally responds to the noise, he opens the door to Macduff, a loyal follower of the king, who has been asked to wake Duncan in preparation for the return journey. Macbeth indicates the location of the king's room, and Macduff discovers the body. When the murder is revealed, Macbeth swiftly kills the prime witnesses, the sleepy guards of the king's bedchamber, and Lady Macbeth faints. The assembled lords of Scotland, including Macbeth, swear to avenge the murder. With suspicion heavy in the air, the king's two sons flee the country, Donalbain to Ireland and Malcolm to raise an army in England. Macbeth is duly proclaimed the new king of Scotland, but recalling the witch's second prophecy, he arranges the murder of his fellow soldier Banquo and his son Fleance, both of whom represent a threat to his kingship according to the witch's prophecy. The hired murderers kill Banquo, but mistakenly allow Fleance to escape. At a celebrated banquet that night, Macbeth is thrown into a state of horror when the ghost of the murdered Banquo appears at the dining table. Again, his wife tries to straighten Macbeth, but the strain is clearly beginning to show. The following day, Macbeth returns to the same witches who initially foretold his destiny. This time, the witches not only confirm that the sons of Banquo will rule in Scotland, but they also add a new prophecy. Macbeth will be invincible in battle until the time when the Forest of Burnham moves towards his stronghold at Dunsinane and until he meets an enemy not born of woman. Dismissing both of these predictions as nonsense, Macbeth prepares for invasion. When he is told that Macduff has deserted him, Macbeth begins the final stage of his tragic descent. His first move is the destruction of Macduff's wife and children. In England, Macduff receives the news. At that very moment, He swears his allegiance to the young Malcolm. Malcolm persuades him that the murder of his family should act as the spur to revenge. Meanwhile, in Scotland, Lady Macbeth has been taken ill. She walks in her sleep and seems to recall in fragmentary memories the details of the murder. Now, in a series of alternative scenes, the action of the play moves rapidly between the advancing army of Malcolm and the defensive preparations of Macbeth. When Malcolm's army disguise themselves with sawn off branches, Macbeth sees what appears to be a wood moving towards his stronghold at Dunsinane. And when he finally meets Macduff in single combat, his sworn enemy reveals that he came into the world by cesarean action. He was not precisely speaking born of woman. On hearing this news, Macbeth rejects one final time the witch's prophecy. With a loud cry, he launches himself at Macduff and is slain. In the final scene, Malcolm is crowned as the new king of Scotland to the acclaim of all. Character analysis. Macbeth. Macbeth is introduced in the play as a warrior hero whose fame on the battlefield wins him great honor from the king. Essentially, though, he is a human being whose private ambitions are made clear to the readers when he speaks to himself. These often conflict with the opinion others have of him. Despite his fearless character in battle, Macbeth is concerned by the prophecies of the witches, and his thoughts remain confused, both before, during, and after his murder of King Duncan. When Duncan announces that he intends the kingdom to pass to his son Malcolm, Macbeth appears frustrated. When he is about to commit the murder, he undergoes terrible pangs of conscience. Macbeth is at his most human sympathetic form when his manliness is mocked and demeaned by his wife. Macbeth has resolved himself into a far more stereotypical villain and asserts his manliness over that of his wife. His ambition begins to spur him toward further terrible deeds, and he starts to disregard and even to challenge fate and fortune. Each successive murder reduces his human characteristics still further. Macbeth's hubris or excessive pride becomes his dominant character trait. His boldness and impression of personal invincibility mark him out for a tragic fall. Character analysis. Lady Macbeth. Macbeth's wife is one of the most powerful female characters in literature. Unlike her husband, she lacks all humanity to such an extent that to deprive her of her feminine instinct to care. Her burning ambition is to be queen, and she persistently taunts her husband for his lack of courage, even though we know of his bloody deeds on the battlefield. But in public, she is able to act as a caring hostess, enticing her victim, the king, into her castle. When she faints immediately after the murder of Duncan, the reader is left wondering whether this too is part of her act. Ultimately, she fails the test of her own heart and ruthlessness. The pace of events becomes too much even for her. She becomes mentally deranged, a mere shadow of her former commanding self, causing her to face an untimely death. Character analysis. Malcolm. Son of King Duncan with his brother Donalbain, Malcolm quickly ascertains the danger of remaining in Scotland and flees the country. Malcolm is the embodiment of all that is good in kinship. This feature of his character, playing a part in order to strengthen the prospect of good, is in stark contrast to Macbeth, who plays a part in order to advance his own evil. In the final scene of the play, Malcolm is presented as the future king. His use of the phrase, by the grace of grace, indicates the importance that he attaches to the service of good and reminds the audience of his direct descent from one who ruled by divine right, as opposed to Macbeth, who usurped the throne. Thank you for watching this video. I hope to see you again in the next session.